I'm back. I recently attended the Cypress Bluff CDD meeting, which happens to be the CDD for E-Town. And as always, I've got my notes. In fact, I got more notes than normal. I've got the approved budget for 2026, and we're about to go over it, dive into it a little bit. And I'm going to tell you why, for the price of a Starbucks coffee every month, our life in E-Town is going to get that much better. All right, diving in. First thing I want to talk about, a little overview of the meeting. First, there was a budget hearing. This was led by the district manager, Jim Oliver, who Jim and I actually go way back. You may or may not know this, but I did serve on a CDD board in Clay County when I lived out there. Jim and this management company also managed our CDD out there, so I got to know them a little bit well. I already got their contacts in my phone and my emails, and it makes it great for when I'm able to communicate and ask questions. And full disclosure, I'm not an attorney or an attorney spokesperson. I'm not a board of supervisors or anything like that, so I'm going to be a little bit careful. I'm going to give you the quick and dirty rundown of these meetings, but keep that in mind that I'm nobody official. And if you want the notes like I have here, all you got to do is go to cypressbluffcdd.com, and you can find all the information on there. I'll leave the link below. Today, we're going to do the quick and dirty notes. There's about 14 residents in attendance. It was held over at the library, a little room there. It's pretty easy. There's room for more people, but honestly, if we got up to like 50 people or so in attendance, we'd have to kind of look for something. I think there's like a partition in there, and they can make it a little bigger. But anyways, the big deal of this meeting, the 2026 budget was adopted. And there's a keynote here that we're going to kick off before we get into it. It's not a use it or lose it government style budget. So a lot of us who worked in government or were in the military know that once our budgets pass, if we don't use that money, it's gone. No, it works a little bit differently in a CDD, and what we're able to do if we save money throughout the year, the team is definitely working on saving money. If we get into saving money, then that money goes to reserves, and we'll talk more about what those reserves go to. But keep that in mind, and then that allows for the potential that the costs do come down. Now, of course, the government's always printing money, so inflation exists, which means typically the fees don't go down. But there are some areas, and I took note of some. We did see a decrease in the spending on what we planned for in 2025, so we were able to bring those down, kind of reallocate the funds going into 2026. All right. So I've got 3 takeaways that we're about to get into: the annual assessment increase, security spending, and resident feedback. And then we're also going to talk about the amenity center and the maintenance updates. So let's get into the first point, the annual assessment increase. The annual O&M, it did increase 12.98%. A little bit less for those who live in Del Webb because they don't use the amenity center. If you go to the website and you download the approved budget, this is it right here, kind of a shorter version. It's actually longer online. You get more details, photos, that sort of thing. So what does this amount to? What it comes down to, and you got to keep this in mind, it comes down to $8.06 a month. That is the price of a Starbucks coffee these days. So for the price of one coffee a month, we're going to get a lot more, and I'm going to share with you about what those things are. For those living in the active adult, that's only $1.94 a month. The government's printing money. The costs are going up, and actually some things have come down, so we may be able to see an improvement. But what you don't realize and what you really get into is here's the cost for maintenance, the cost for landscaping. All those things matter, and that's the point. Growing maintenance needs, improved security measures, and inflations were the stated reason for those increases. But the long-term payoff is these small increases now help avoid larger special assessments later, so they allow us to bring in some more staff, which we're going to get into. It prevents us from having to do more maintenance down the road. I'll give you a quick example. This CDD board I was on the other side of town, there was a period of time where they weren't really collecting enough money. And as a result, the reserve account got dangerously low. We reached a point where the pool needed to be refinished. And what some people don't realize, this is not a pool that's in your backyard. This is a pool the size and scope similar to what we have here in E-Town. And it was $400,000 to refinish that pool. This is just the cost of maintenance. It's the cost of having the luxury of a swimming pool. It's not going to be free. And us, the residents, are kind of responsible for that. If you use it, you pay for it. And I know some people say, well, I don't ever go up to that pool. Well, it doesn't matter. You live in a community, you pay for the pool the community has. Bottom line, that's how it works. Anyways, if your reserve account is not bolstered enough to handle the cost of those types of repairs. What if we got to put a new roof on the amenity center? What if we have to replace some gym equipment down the line? That's where that reserve account goes in hand. And if it's low, then you can expect that your fee's not going to be going up $8 a month, but it's going to be going up $25, $30 a month. And if you want to see some residents get upset, then just stick around for that. So I'm happy with this increase. It's a small increase. I expect it, and you should too if you live in a CDD neighborhood. And in fact, if you live anywhere in America, you should expect that annually you might have a little cost increase in your day-to-day life. My next key takeaway is security spending and the resident feedback. There was a security patrol line item added, and this security patrol, it didn't exist in the 2025 budget. However, we added a $20,000 increase, and there were some questions, and they're fair questions, questions raised particularly by some residents who don't have access to our community. That's the active adult, their fees going up, but it was kind of explained to them like, hey, that's why your increase is less than the residents who do use the E-Town facilities, which was nice that explanation came, and it is nice that they get that break. I agree. If they're not using it, they shouldn't have to pay for it. Plus, I know they have their own separate fees that go with their amenity center anyway. Security is going to be bolstered. Listen, this spring and early summer, we did have some issues, and the questions arise. How many issues? Was it 5 times? Was it 10 times? And the Board of Supervisors kind of agreed that, hey, more than 10 times we had large groups breaking in basically to the pool. And listen, when people break into the pool and party, I've been running pools. Let me give you a little backstory. I was a head lifeguard from the time I was 16 years old, water safety instructor. Then I became a rescue swimmer in the Navy, flew in helicopters, but still trained at the pool and stuff all the time. I have lived in the pool my entire life. And I will tell you that when people break in the pool, they don't just break in and lounge around in the chairs. They do all kinds of mischiefs. We're talking about like trash cans in the pool. We're talking about chairs in the pool, things getting ripped, broken, destroyed, gates being propped open for their buddies to come in. The fence is only like 4 or 5 feet. So it's easy to jump. I could jump it. Anybody watching this video could jump the fence, because that was a question like, well, there's an electronic gate. Why do we have to pay for security? Well, have you been there? I'll hop the fence and I'll let 20 people in at midnight. Not a problem. I'm not personally going to do that. But what I'm saying is, if you were going to do it, that's how it gets done. And we're going to talk about a repair that was made to the gate, in fact, that was about a quarter of that cost of that security. So keep that in mind for later. But it was also noted that, listen, some things went down. Like right here, we saw some savings on electric, cable, and internet. We saw some savings. That was a total of $4,500 in savings. And then this one was huge down here. Fitness equipment rentals. They've been doing a lot of work, making some improvements there at the gym and changing up the structure. We went from $25,000 down to $9,000. That was a $16,000 savings. So right there, we got our 20 grand packed in. So we can move line items and we can move things around. This proposed budget is for a total amount. So it's really nice to see that. The security, it hasn't necessarily been settled. We also did bolster the staff. So it may be a mix to come of like staff staying later after hours and then switching to security. These are details they got to work out, but the budget approves us to know how much we can afford. The next step for the board is to figure out how are we going to spend that money and how are we going to save some of that money. Okay, the last point I wanted to talk about was the amenity center and maintenance update. So once the budget was approved, we kind of had just a normal CDD meeting. Management and the supervisors, they're allowed to kind of make their statements. If you take a look at the minutes, you'll see the breakdown on how these meetings go, if you've ever been in one. Amenity expenses were up 17%. This was primarily due to the after-hour staffing. After we had some issues at the pool, the CDD took from what reserves and from what budget we had remaining, and we're able to put security measures and added staff already, looking to get that in the budget. But anyways, fitness center upgrades happened, and then repairs to gates, rooftops, and the pool Marsite. Listen to this. The gate was adjusted and fixed due to normal wear and tear, and it cost $5,559. $5,500 to repair the gate. Remember what I was talking about, that $20,000 security budget and how that's going to save us money in the long term. As people break in and vandalize things, the cost to fix these is pretty high. And that's normal. Those are normal costs. Those aren't inflated costs. And trust me, if you go to these meetings regularly, you'll see that the board and supervisors and the management, they work through the details and they try to keep the costs as low as possible. Remember, the board of supervisors is actually made up of residents. So they live here. They front the bill just like you and me. who live here and aren't on the board. But normal wear and tear cost us a $5,500 repair to the gate. What's it going to cost when somebody breaks in and vandalizes? This is why my opening statement for the cost of a Starbucks coffee a month, we are going to save money in the long term. That added security is going to be a deterrent, and hopefully we won't have those types of issues at the pool. Had we let them go, how many times are you going to replace the gate throughout the year? How many times are you going to replace the trash bins? How many times are you going to replace the chairs? And if they damage the Marsite, we had a Marsite repair. Luckily, it was repaired at no cost towards Village Pool. So shout out to our on-site management who negotiated that into the deal. Sure, that's not easy to get, and I don't count on that happening every single time. Congratulations to the on-site management for working that deal out. That was great news. Last little bit of clerical information. Meetings are now scheduled for 1 p.m. on the 4th Tuesday of the month. There were some adjustments to this, two of which being November and December. They're going to shift to different Tuesdays because of Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. Big takeaways from the CDD meeting. One, a mild increase in assessment, which is going to lead to cost savings in the long run. Two, security and amenity center investments that are going to lead to a better quality of life for the residents of E-Town. And number three, the last thing was transparency and flexibility. Remember, this budget is an overall set budget, but we can adjust line items and reallocate funds as needed. And I do have a little bit of bonus. We are going to start bolstering the reserve account. It's going to go from a $55,000 a year up to $100,000. Remember, the neighborhood's already showing some age. You start breaking ground in 2019. It's 2025. We're 6 years old from development. The life of a pool, maybe 8, maybe 10 years before it starts needing things. So we need to start bolstering that reserve account to save money. All this came out to like $8 a month. I'm happy with that. I think the future looks bright for E-Town, and I'm excited about it. I just wanted to share it with you. If you want to stay informed, subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. If you were at the meeting, let me know what I missed. What would you like to specifically hear next time?